Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We're wrapping up this work week with a pretty fun Friday night slate. Here in this one, we're taking a look at the Bulls headed to San Antonio, take on the Spurs. Make sure you do like and subscribe to the page. Got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video that we came back around last night to go 4-0 on. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com as well with some player props and best bets in that one. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area. It's just what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's jump into it.
Yeah, big slate as usual for Friday. Plenty to choose from. We're looking at the Bulls, who are basically a pick'em in San Antonio. It's -1 right now for Chicago, and the total at 231. Pretty high, but not that high for a Spurs game. As I mentioned, tons of games on the slate tonight. We got Detroit +3.5 at Orlando. Boston is +2 at Atlanta. Intriguing game to watch there. I don't think we're ready to buy either of those teams yet, though. The Lakers are on a back-to-back, +7 at Charlotte. LeBron sat last night and is questionable with a knee. Denver is -5 at New Orleans. The Pacers are on a pick'em at OKC. Ooh, how far they have fallen. The Jazz +4 at Memphis. We're going to break that one down for you in a separate video. The Blazers -2 at Rockets, and I take Portland in that article Josh mentioned. Do like them in Houston tonight. Clippers are +7 at Miami. The Wolves are +8 as they head to Phoenix on a back-to-back after losing in Golden State last night. And then the Knicks are +9 in Milwaukee. Total of 216 there as the Bucks look to get right. Yeah, I mean, the Spurs are not a good team. They're in a full-blown rebuild here. And for me, it's just kind of an interesting side note to see whether Greg Popovich is actually going to hang it up after this, and just if he's just trying to coach up some of these young guys and pass the baton to Becky Hammond to become the first female head coach in the NBA. But, I mean, for now, they just haven't been competitive against any good teams, really, since early December when they went on a stretch and challenged some teams. They're 4-12 in their last 16. They have not won 2 in a row since Christmas. They're 23rd in offensive rating during that span, and 18th in defensive rating. The second worst true shooting percentage. This is the modern NBA, and they do not shoot threes. They do not guard the paint. They've covered, they've won and covered against some bad teams like Houston, but 0-6 against the spread in the last 6 against teams with winning records, 1-4 against the spread their last 5 home games. And Chicago, I'm a little reluctant to put heavy units on them given the situation, because their defense has been robbed of Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball. I say robbed because Caruso finally came back from that foot and hamstring injury, and then Grayson Allen took him out. Imagine there's going to be some retribution for Grayson the next time he faces this team or many others. But anyway, he's out with a broken wrist, and Chicago's defense is not nearly as good without him or Lonzo Ball. The rookie, however, Ayo Dosunmu, has been playing really well in relief, and they did get Zach LaVine back 2 games ago. So their offense at least has taken off with LaVine averaging 23, 7.5, and 7.5 in those 2. They've got a 114 offensive rating, a 110 defensive rating. So you would think a lot of points will come out of this game, given the way San Antonio plays at home. They give up the second most at home, 113, and they score about 113 at home, but that's still not getting us over. I'm going to steer away from an over, given how Chicago has kind of hit a wall at times without those 2 guards who really, Lonzo especially, pushed the pace for them. Yeah. I do trust the Bulls to win, though, and I really trust DeMar DeRozan to carry the way. You mentioned it's his first game back in San Antonio since being traded or leaving San Antonio. And, you can get 25.5 points at near even money for him, and then you can just get 25 in a win at +230. So that's one of my favorite prop bets tonight. I would lean that way rather than trying to mess with this total at 231.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. If you want to juice up, taking the Bulls, which I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit scared of them. I think personally I'm getting a little bit ahead of them just really going back onto, not necessarily the same type of tear that they were on earlier in the season when they did have Ball and Caruso. But definitely an uptick from what they were doing before the last five, which was really bad, obviously. In their last five, they've made a bit of a comeback, at least going 4-1 against the spread, 3-2 in that time, straight up. But, it's really about having DDR and Levine in terms of being able to, stay atop in the top of the class. I think Caruso and Ball, what they do is really elevate them from, let's say, the third or fourth best team in the East to contending for the Eastern Conference and making it to the finals. And that's because of what they do on defense. But the other thing about the offense that you mentioned, you're a little bit worried, a little bit loath to just go ahead and say, oh, Chicago, feel really good about this one, bet all the units on them to win. Part of that is because they're not scoring as much as they were. We mentioned their offensive rating that's taken a hit. That's definitely in part because of Levine and DeMar not playing. But then you look at Caruso and Lonzo, them not playing. This team relied on points off of turnovers at like the fifth highest clip in games where Caruso and Lonzo Ball are playing. They're not getting those points off turnovers. That's dropped all the way down to them being like 16th in the league in terms of the percentage of the points that they score off of turnovers. So that was giving them about 18 points a game right there, and with a ton of steals as well. So the defense leading to offense was something that they really relied upon to take them from a team dropping 110 to a team that's easily capable of dropping 120, right? So it's a pretty big difference there. You mentioned the slide for San Antonio. It's a huge slide. It's just really who they are at this point, right? They were one of those teams this season and even in last season where they were, really inconsistent. We didn't know if they were going to win, 6 in a row or just lose 10 in a row, right? And that was the case even earlier in the season and last season for the Spurs. Now they're just really consistently bad, right? That 4-12 straight up in the last 16, barely only covering one more game than that. You mentioned not being able to win 2 in a row. Really what it comes down to is they're, like you said, this is the modern NBA. They're not only not getting points, from three, they're not getting points from the free throw line. Another area that obviously everyone started to exploit as the most efficient shot in basketball, if you can get to the line. And they're not doing that. They're doing that at the percentage of the points that they get from the line is dead last at this point over their last, 15, 16 games that we've been talking about here. They keep that pace up, and in part because DeJounte Murray is a very, very good point guard. Before the season, he's not someone that you probably would have said there's no way that he's a part of a Ben Simmons deal, for instance. But now it's like, why would I ever do that? Unless I'm completely revamping the roster. I had heard a little rumor that Knicks fans probably started that the Knicks are interested in him, but he's doing it all by himself at this point. I mean, even during their really bad streak, he's still putting up numbers: 22.5 points, 9 boards, and about 10 assists in that time. He's got 10 assists in all 4 of his last 4 games as well, 5 games that he's played, 10 plus assists in all of those. So he's on a huge tear. You could definitely consider him. We told you to target Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the other night when the Thunder played the Bulls, because the Bulls' 2 best, top of the D defenders and Caruso and Ball are not there. Shai Gilgeous is going to get his. I think you can feel pretty good about the point guard for the Spurs tonight, Murray, getting his as well. But no matter what he does, it's not enough to keep them in games, as we know. I mean, the second leading scorer after him in the last 15 is Jakob Poeltl, and he's not even getting 15 a game there. Keldon Johnson is what he is at this point, a 15 points a game, maybe 6 boards, maybe a couple assists kind of guy, and that's what you're going to get. So like you said, this team is probably ripe for having a new coach before too long. I'm not sure how much Pop wants to continue to try to rebuild a team like this, and I think this is what we're getting from the Spurs the rest of the season. I'm not worried about them trying to climb back in to a 10 seed or a 9 seed even. I think they're just going to be in the bottom and a lottery pick this year.
Yeah, and I would be worried if it was Bulls -5 or 6, but to just win, I do feel good about that, because the Spurs, you look at their numbers straight up, 9-25 as underdogs, 2-13 at home. It climbs up closer to 500 in both those degrees when you throw in the spread, because they've been able to compete. To your point, DeJounte Murray keeps them in games, but they have not been able to beat good teams, and they have become predictable in terms of Vegas setting. They're not expected to win tonight, and they do not win. They're 7-13 against the Eastern Conference, which was their bread and butter last year. That's how they stayed afloat, by beating up on the East. It's not happening now. 8-20 straight up when playing on normal rest. And the Bulls have been winning, of course, when they're expected to win. They're 12-3 as road favorites. I mean, this is close to a pick'em line. It's not necessarily an easy smash spot for the Bulls, but they match up well. even with those guards out, because if Pirtle's your second leading scorer and you have Vucevic down there to at least slow him down, I don't see the Spurs having much of an offensive explosion. I think if you are targeting points in this one, I would look at the Bulls team total, because the Spurs, you look at, they've played some really bad offenses and held them in check, like OKC and the Clippers and the Rockets. Other than that, they've given up at least 114 in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of their last 9 games here. Even gave up 111 to the Knicks. So, I mean, they will give you points, especially at home, where I mentioned they gave up 113 on average. If that Bulls total comes out around 113, 114, I would hit the over on that, along with some DeRozan props.
I'm with it. Yeah, I can dig it. I mean, we didn't even really mention something that we were talking about whenever we bring up the Spurs this season. I mean, the home road splits not really translating into victories. It's a clear pattern of overs when they're at home. I'm a little bit worried about it as well, because of the fact that, I think Chicago can get theirs. But at the same time, this pace isn't necessarily going to be what the Spurs are used to. I mean, they've slowed it down a smidge in their last, 15-ish games that I mentioned. It's a pretty large size. But, they dropped a few points in terms of their pace. The Bulls did as well entirely. And we know, easily their pace is going to drop when Lonzo and Caruso are both out. So I'm wary of that as well, but feel really good about the Bulls, feel really good about DDR in there as well. And probably feel good about DeJounte as well. DeJounte Murray on the other side, despite the fact that I'm not going to take him in any player performance doubles, obviously. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Do like and subscribe to that page. Got those other couple videos up for you today, including that player props video that will look to continue that 4-0 streak and forget about Wednesday's bad night. And so until we see you next, happy betting.